You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
See if you can come up with some feeble excuse as to why the Andrews government is not responsible for what's going on in this state. You try.
What amazes me about this is there's just no other news coming out. All we're getting is coronavirus.
Okay.
There's a lot of other things, obviously,
well,
going on, but they're not being reported.
There's not a lot of things going on. A lot of things are on hold because of the absolute disgraceful incompetence of this government. So let me just give you this for you to contemplate. There's 7 states or territories in this continent called Australia. 7. The average deaths, and it's a bit misleading because some of them haven't had any, but the average deaths in 6 of the 6 of the states or the territories is 11. 11. In Victoria, the 7th state or colony, there's 765 deaths as opposed to the average around Australia of 11. And some of them haven't had any, but that increases the percentages.
Well, what my figure says is that there's 770 deaths
right.
of the 850 that are in Australia. 770 in Victoria of the 850 deaths that are in Australia.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So,
and what about the 20,000 cases are in, there's 27,000 cases in total around Australia and 20,000 of those come out of Victoria.
Okay, so Donald, I'm hear what you say, but every time I bring this up, you said, "Oh, well, who would do a better job?" So
no. I do say
no.
I still go by saying that, but what infuriates me is, and it's really starting to narc at me now, there's an inquiry going on and that nobody is putting up their hand as to the reason why the outbreak occurred.
Because they're liars and they're corrupt. Now, Donald.
I've got to agree with you.
Right, so the very old, particularly when they're dumped by their families at aged care facilities, the very old are the vulnerable. Now, listen to this. The average age of COVID deaths in Australia is 83. 83. That's slightly higher than the life expectancy, which is 82. What does that tell you? The total deaths in Australia in aged care for the first 7 months of this year are almost 1,000 less than in 2019. And they just lie with the figures. They said the 20-year-old used by the Andrews government as proof that the virus does not discriminate. Turns out that the 20-year-old, died from a drug overdose. They are just out of control, and I'm not sure, we keep saying this, why we put up with it. And as for locking down the community and wearing masks, they said the Swedish mortality rates are at a normal seasonal level, and they haven't had any of the lockdowns and haven't had any of the masks. It is a rort, and it is disgraceful what's going on. But we say it every week. As for that, have a listen to this, and this is another fact. Have a listen to this.
Well, while you're looking for your fact,
The Swedish health system, though, is a lot better and was well equipped to deal with it. Because what happens is if you get when you get COVID, the issue is that it then clogs up your intensive care units. It's not quite as simple as what you're saying, Sam.
It is exactly as simple. This is the debate going on in the Victorian Parliament. It turns out that Henry Pinksier's company, which was awarded the hotel quarantine security tender, was awarded it without the formal tender application, and he is a factional member of the
Labor Party.
And his daughter works for Daniel Andrews. Now, honestly and truly, if that is not sedition, if that is not treachery or bringing the state into disrepute and having grounds to be dismissed, I don't know what is. But they duck shove, they won't answer questions, they are absolutely corrupt. And I think
it's put our leaders in a very, very bad light, and I'm just horrified that these people even retain their jobs. They're in charge. I've just lost complete faith in Andrews. You can't call him a liar, but he does not answer the question and he plays with the truth. And those other people in responsible positions, they leave. You wouldn't even employ them. They are an absolute disgrace. I'm talking about the police. I'm talking about emergency workers, the secretary of the Premier's department. Those people are weak, and somebody, either it's Andrew saying, do not answer the question, either he's a bully, but there's something that somebody has got to come in. Even the health minister.
I think the police
they're all duck shoving.
The police have been pretty independent. They've said, hey, we had nothing to do with this. Like what they said about the curfew, they didn't ask for the curfew. They weren't consulted about the hotels. I think the police have been pretty good.
I think the federal government, the last time, now I stand to be corrected, even in the bushfires, the federal government should have come in with, and they were rejected by the help from the various states because of their union type affiliations. They've got to have firefighters and whatever else. But to my memory, the last time there was a state of emergency would have been Cyclone Tracy in 1974, and the army went up to Darwin, General Stratton I think it was, and took over and rebuilt the city. Now that should, you got the ADF back then. Okay, it's not a state, is it? It's a capital territory.
It was a territory back then.
Yeah. So the state. Yeah, so it may be a little bit different. But the ADF or the government, the general government, have got to come in and take control of this situation.
Well, I'd like to replay you last week's podcast when you were defending him and saying, who would do a better job?
I'm still saying the same, John, that nobody knows how to fight this, but what I'm critical of is their character and not being able to admit we made a mistake. Yes, this wasn't transparent. What deal did Andrews make with the politicians when he got through a further state of emergency? I think there were a couple hanging, and he convinced them to vote to continue the state of emergency. What did he actually promise those politicians on the opposition?
I don't know, but you said who would do a better job? Someone who doesn't do that would do a better job. Someone who doesn't employ private security companies would do a better job. Someone who doesn't bundle all the people into nursing homes would do a better job. Someone who is transparent about the Cedar Meat Works would do a better job. Someone who accepts the ADF or whatever they're called.
I've always been critical of Cedar, all of those things, but I'm talking about the actual problem.
A better job.
The lockdown, I think, is important because in Israel they opened up their, and I think it's happened 10,000 cases in France. England are debating whether to have another lockdown. Israel, they're revolting now because they're bringing in a lockdown. They opened it up because simply of the economy. And
because certain religious groups won't adhere to the lockdown and certain people who are irresponsible won't adhere to the lockdown and have parties and gatherings, and the whole of the community pays the price for it, and that is not right.
And those groups, tell me something else. Did those groups get fined? Everybody else gets fined. Did those groups get fined?
But hang on. A minute ago he said lockdowns don't work.
Who?
Now he's called Sam, and now he's calling the people who don't adhere to it irresponsible.
I said lockdowns for the whole general community don't work. They're not necessary. They just don't work. But if you're going to thumb your nose, it's like the speed limit. Speed limits work for 95% of the population unless someone gets in a car and drives at 200 miles an hour and couldn't give a stuff.
Come on. Do you want me to show you the chart again? Of course lockdowns work. It's worked twice. It didn't work the first time. It wasn't done properly, but it's worked twice.
There is absolute data that says that is nonsense. In Sweden, I just read it out, that Sweden didn't have lockdowns. They have the less action with COVID infections.
No, they just live with it. They don't. That's not true. They live with it. They have a lot of daily infections, but they just live with it.
So if you have someone that goes out to a supermarket and actually gets the COVID virus and then goes back to their home and they're just in the confines of their own house for 23 hours a day, they will spread that to the people in the house because they're locked down, and then they'll go out and then the next people that they fraternise with will get it. There is no critical wisdom that says lockdowns work. It is just knee-jerk. What?
Data.
No, that's not right, mate. You can't point to any data that says it's just all trial and error. The New Zealand government had lockdowns, and then they didn't have lockdowns, and now they've let.
Well, they've come back again. They locked down again as soon as they got another infection. I'd go along with the lockdown, but what it is getting out, and these groups that are not adhering to what everybody else does.
That's what I just said.
Certain parts of society, and they've got it. Why they weren't fined is just beyond me. And the other thing, while I'm on my soapbox, where I live on the peninsula, Mornington Peninsula, we've got one or two cases.
None, you're free now.
Free. Well, I was just going to go on and say that we haven't had one for 14 days. Now,
You're officially free as of today.
when did that shire come into the metropolitan area? It's a shire. It's not a council, a municipality. It's a shire. It's as far away as Geelong is from Melbourne. Now, why hasn't it been? Why isn't it lifted down there? There's so much rural down there. There's not so much residential, and it still comes under.
But this is the bit. Sorry, but this is the bit that Sam doesn't get about why we need to be locked down in the radius. Okay, so where we are now is currently free of coronavirus. Where you're from, Don, is currently free of coronavirus. But Sam wants to still be able to go and get his fish and chips from Werribee, which is got the most cases at the moment.
Thank you, Rod.
But that's okay, isn't it? Like, so he wants to go there, grab it, and bring it back. I mean, come on.
No, mate, you're.
You're speechless.
This is it's allegedly a partially educated person, the Rocket Rod, speaking absolute shit, and that is just nonsense.
You probably took it there in the first place.
So here's a way to make money, Donald. Just moving right along.
We're moving on.
Well, go on. Push on. What else do you want to speak about the virus?
Since our I don't want to speak about the virus.
All right, come on, move on. What do you got?
Well,
no, not you.
him. He wouldn't
What
really.
do you want me to continue with that for?
Well, you didn't answer it. I mean, that's why you need to be locked. That's why we've got these 5-kilometre radius. We're trying to contain the thing and deal with it.
So 5 kilometres. So what's wrong with going 6 kilometres? What's going with 20 kilometres? No, mate, you're speaking nonsense. The lockdown for the majority of the central business district of Victoria is not necessary. It is ordered to hone in on the danger areas, and that is certain religious groups not adhering to it, and old people in nursing homes. They are the critical dangers in this society.
But you're
not
contradicting
locking
yourself.
the whole thing down so this city grinds to a halt. And it is nonsense. They are liars, they are incompetent, and they are ducking and weaving, and they are corrupt. And that's it. That's what I say. Now, Don, here's an interesting thing, I think. Would you do this? This is just moving right along, unless you want me to come back to that again. A court in Slovenia. Donald. A court in Slovenia. Do you know where Slovenia is?
I think they had two winners. They had two of those gentlemen for Slovenia.
Yep.
Stood on the podium for the Tour de France, I think.
Did they?
I think first and second.
Sloveniaks. Where is Slovenia?
I don't know.
What is
Part of the old Czechoslovakia, isn't it?
Czechoslovakia? The Bosnian Herzegovian marvel. That's what they used to call the Macedonian marvel, Peter Dacos. So people in Slovenia, the council, the court, sentenced, listen to this, a 22-year-old woman to 2 years prison for deliberately cutting off her hand with a circular saw to make a fraudulent insurance claim. The District Court of Libulia said Julia Agjistovic agreed with her boyfriend to have her left hand severed above the wrist in their home capital. Just what would the insurance payout be for severing?
Imagine, hold still, Dale. You know?
What's that?
Hold still, Dale, and they got the circular saw out.
Yeah, hold still, Dale, that's right.
I'm just visualising it.
So I wonder what she would get if she'd got away with it. How would you say, just as they were doing some masonry at home and the circular saw slipped and cut her hand off? I wonder what the payout would be.
It was $1 million. So she got done for fraud, trying to defraud an insurance company out of $1 million.
And so she wouldn't have got the money, and it's so Donald, the next, what would you cut off what would you get a circular
Just
saw?
thinking of the pain.
What would you?
Yeah, for $1 million, Don, what would you cut off?
What would you cut off, and how much would
I
you
don't
get
think
for
I
cutting it
could-
off?
No, I'm weak when it comes to pain.
Are you what, this big
An ear,
leviathan?
could I cut off? I've done part of an ear. That didn't really hurt. I suppose an ear, that doesn't hurt.
You'd cut an ear off for insurance claim?
Could I get anything for that? I don't think
Not
so.
a lot.
Yeah, well, if you could say it was an accident, you could if you got
No,
an
you
insurance
couldn't.
claim.
It's only cosmetic. What does the lobe of your ear or your ear do?
You're
It
grabbing
does
the wrong
nothing.
ear.
Well, that ear, I'm missing half of it now.
Assuming that your romantic life is over,
So what are you leading to?
Well, I'm going to tell you, it's assuming that your romantic intentions are over and you've got no further use for maybe the John Thomas.
Is it just decorative?
Yeah, if it's just decorative, just hanging down there, the steak and 2 veg. If you cut that off, what do you reckon that would be worth, Donald? You could use it as a drinking straw or an agricultural pipe, or you could snort coke through it, or what could you use if you cut your dick off, Donald? What could you use it for, do you think? What would be some of the uses? You could,
Doorstop?
yeah, or a cigar holder, or you could lop the end off it and make a couple of Gladstone bags out of the offcuts. What do you reckon? How much would your dick be worth if you cut it off, Donald, with a circular saw or a knife or something? And who would do it? I'd do it.
You do it.
I'd cut it off just to see you squeal like a pig.
Oh, no, you do it. Oh, no.
No, I wouldn't do it to me. Oh, no, I'd like do it to you.
Oh, jeez.
So would you ever think of cutting anything off your body, like something?
I told you that if we had to,
Yep.
my ear.
Ear. How would you wear your sunglasses?
Van Gogh did that.
Van Gogh?
Van Gogh. Van
Chopper
Gogh,
read?
Gogh.
Chopper read?
Yeah.
He did too.
He did?
You are right. You are very right.
Yeah.
But he
Who
did
did
it to
Van
get
Gogh
out of...
send his ear to?
What?
You don't know who he sent it to?
No, is this a joke?
No.
Oh, no, sorry. His girlfriend, his lover?
Paul Gauguin.
Paul Gauguin, the sculptor or the artist.
He was the artist who painted the Fijian or Polynesian figures of the South Pacific.
Oh, yeah.
You remember Paul Gauguin?
Yeah.
Now, here's a man, Donald. Please, you'll think that this has come from the same publication that said about people going to the strippers, sitting in the front row and getting sprayed with vaginal fluids because of the strippers, and we found out. Remember that publication was a bit bogus. What was that?
Let's just put that in context. It was saying that they caught COVID, but it wasn't right.
And it came from some
a bogus
New
account,
York,
yeah.
some paper. And so you'll think that this is bogus, but this is true. A man has now had his scrotum and his penis removed because of a flesh-eating disease called necrotizing fasciitis. It's a flesh-eating disease, and he went to the Goulburn Hospital in Graham Street in April, and he is now suing the Goulburn Valley Health Administration because they failed, this is in inverted commas, Donald, failed to adequately or properly assess his penis, adequately or at all, when he presented to the hospital with swollen genitalia. So you walk in there with your agates up like Jonathan Apples, and the snag is just a fraction.
Jonathan Apples has got big agates, has he?
No, apples, as in types of apples.
Oh, I see, right.
Like Granny Smith's.
Jonathan Apples. So you go into the Goulburn Hospital and you remove your nicks and you say, "Look at this," and someone says, "Oh my word, aren't they beauties?" No, so don't worry about aren't they beauties. They didn't assess his scrotum and his penis properly or diligently, and he's now had to. You think I'm making it up? He's now had it removed, his cock and his balls, because of a flesh-eating disease. What would that be? It's called, I'll tell you what it's called, necrotizing fasciitis.
This is real, Don. This is from the Herald Sun.
What do you think about that, Donald? Isn't it amazing?
Well, I suppose it's like, isn't there another flesh-eating bug that comes from down your way at Point Lonsdale? The Bairnsdale bugger, I think it's gone across there and it's come across to
Isn't it amazing?
the peninsula. So
How would it have got into his scrotum and his agates?
So what's it worth, Donald, for compensation?
For what? That or
If you lose your bits, what's it worth?
Why are you being compensated for that if it's got to come off?
Well, he's saying that he wasn't looked after properly by the hospital. So if
what else could they have done?
Well, they could
Checked
have,
them.
They could have checked them and said, "Oh, no, you got a flesh-eating disease called
we better apply
necrophilitis."
some ointment.
They just would have said, "Oh, put your dick away and get out." What are you, just in flasher or something?
Well, he must have been in agony if he'd gone in or worried.
Well, he did, and he said they didn't examine his scrotum or his penis properly.
So they could have fixed it. Are you saying they could have fixed it?
Well, it's like
That's what he's saying.
That's what he's saying. So he says that, she says this.
So it's like the bloke who swallowed his glass eye. This was not in Goulburn, but this was in Shepparton. A bloke swallowed his glass eye.
So how did he pass it?
Well, I'm telling you what happened. He swallowed it and he went into the hospital and he said to the doctor, "I've swallowed my glass eye." And the doctor said, "Take these, laxettes or..." he said in a couple of days, he said, "You should pass it. And if you hear a chink when you open your bowels and it goes into you'll hear it chink, you'll hear it hit the porcelain. Just reach in, probably with some gloves on. You don't want to put your hand in amongst the...
Disinfect it.
And so after he took this for about 3 or 4 days, and eventually he hadn't passed the glass eye, so he went back into the doctor, and the doctor said, "Have you passed it?" He said, "No, I have not." The doctor said, "We better have a look. Take your pants off." So he said, "Bend over," and the doctor put a miner's lamp on, and he parted the cheeks of his arse, and he looked up his rectum, and he said, peered up, and he said, "No, mate," he said, "I'm sorry, I can't see it." And the bloke said, "That's funny, I can see you." That was in Shepparton, but I don't think he had necrophilia, whatever it was called. Anyhow,
Necrophilia.
No.
Hey, listen.
So,
Now listen.
yeah,
I know we're a little bit late with this, but there was a 50th anniversary last week. Took me back in time.
Kathy.
No.
Oh no, that's 20 years ago.
No.
Yep, sorry.
And I saw him at a theatre. It was a documentary, Woodstock. Jimi Hendrix died 50 years ago. He revolutionised guitar playing. Did you see that film on Woodstock?
Yeah.
Back in the late 60s?
Yeah. What else did he revolutionise? Smoking pot.
Well, he also is part of that 27 year. He was only 27 when he passed away, and a lot of other famous singers and entertainers died at 27 too, didn't they? Amy Winehouse being the latest.
We've been through all that, yeah.
Have we?
About 7, yeah, we have. You've got CTE, Donald. We
I
went
have.
through
Or
that.
maybe I should he might be right, the son. I've got it.
You've got it, yep. So we could get a snuff box and put your brain in. Now, what would you do with this man? A bloke called, I can mention his name because it's out there, Ben Kelly. He's a teacher, was a teacher at the Swan Hill Tech. He's 45, I think. Had sex with a 15-year-old student and had it a couple of times. What would you do with that person? Could you believe a 45-year-old person, teacher, would single out one of his students, 15-year-old girl, and have sex with her? Could you believe? Why are you looking at me like that?
I know a female teacher. Well, there's been a number of female teachers who've done that as well. It's just not the male that's done it. There's been females do it to their students.
And coerced young boys, 15-year-old boys. Mm-hmm. Didn't that woman in Israel who's been...
No, that was different. That's molestation. The one that's being deported to Australia.
Finally deported her.
Yeah. I think she's going to appeal too, by the way.
I see James Naismith. Do you know who he is?
Wasn't he ruckman for...
Was he a cricketer?
No, there was...
I think he's a cricketer.
It was a golfer. No, that was a long time ago.
James Naismith. Yes, there was too. But I think James Naismith is a cricketer. He said he was groomed, one of many to be groomed by the late Peter Roebuck, the cricketing writer, who used to wander around all the cricket events writing for... The Age, I think he was.
Yeah.
And used to just try and groom. He's sort of a...
I understand. Yeah, keep going. So what's your point?
What about all these...
He's trying to cheer us up.
I know, isn't it extraordinary?
What? That these people exist? Well, what's your problem?
Well, what would you do with those people?
Well, you got to be aware of them.
You lock them away.
You're contemplating, aren't you? This upsets you.
No,
Well, what would you do?
no.
Obviously, you've thought about it, and it has upset you. Otherwise, you wouldn't pause like you just have.
Hasn't upset me.
Well, it's made you think. Well, what would you do?
If you,
Come on.
I was just thinking about if you be at all interested in. You've heard.
No, hang on. Go back to what would you do?
I would infect the man with that disease, the flesh-eating disease. No, it's extraordinary. Geez,
What about women that groom young boys?
Yeah, that's
the
Peter
difference?
Roebuck.
Women.
What pieces of snot these people are, aren't they? It's all right to groom people if they're... No, I don't know. Maybe we're being too philosophical. Oscar, have you heard of Oscar Wilde sunglasses or glasses?
I've heard of Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde, these are glasses. They got fined $3.5 million for saying that if you bought a pair, we'd donate a pair to those who had limited eyesight and bad eyesight in third world countries. They sold 330,000 pairs and gave away 3,000 glasses. They were up for misleading advertising, which goes... Do you ever go out on the street and ask to donate to charities by people with buckets and shaking things?
I don't give... Oh, no, I don't
Never.
give... Never.
My response is I've given it the tax office. If
No, mine is you are getting paid being a professional collector, and consequently you're getting a percentage, just like crowdfunding. You're getting a percentage of what I'm giving, and that's not the point. I'll give it to a charity, but I will not give it to you.
So you mail into UNICEF and Salvation
I give
Army?
to charities as long as it goes directly to the charity.
How do you know that though?
Well, that's why I'm very cautious. Very, very cautious.
Would you buy an Anzac pin on Anzac Day?
No.
Oh, I would. What, the old diggers sitting there with the slouch hats on selling pins for $5?
Oh, well, yeah, I might help. Yeah, I'd help that.
Oh, you would? Oh, I see. So you give to some people out in the street. You got anything to speak about there?
Well, I have, because I was contemplating Gary.
Go on.
That's my impression of you. I was contemplating Gary Ablett last week when he and his conspiracy theory. Now, there was one back in 2000. If you go back take your mind back to 2000, the change of the century, and everybody thought the computers had stopped, the clocks had stopped, and whatever else, and nobody had a real answer for it. I just wonder whether there's going to be ever a conspiracy to stop the mobile network or computers in this or around the world. What is going to happen then? Mobile phones.
A minute, Don. Let me just
No, there is a conspiracy, like they say that this coronavirus. Some people have put it up as a conspiracy starting in China.
Desperately trying to keep on track with you.
Seriously.
Let me start again, Donald. So
What about
with
if they
this
got to
Gary
the mobile
Ablett
No, it just made me think about conspiracy theories, and if they ever got to our mobile phones,
who got to them?
well, whoever, there was
Martians?
silent. What is it called? Social Dilemma. That's just been put out, a documentary on Netflix about how all our information is collected by Facebook and Google and all the various
Put out there in the
yes,
ether.
but they can target us through social media.
And your point, Donald, what
My
is
point
this has
is,
come up
it would
from what?
really grind society to a halt if they were to get into our computers and mobile
Time for
network.
sport.
So, Don,
You wouldn't like to explain? No.
wouldn't like to what?
Well,
Explode?
just like you were contemplating about those lecherous people
No,
who groom and
You need to
whatever
do
else.
this into your phone while you're driving, Don.
do you
beg your
know?
pardon?
Do you
You
know
need
what?
to do this spiel into your phone while you're
Do
driving?
you know what the biggest risk is with something interrupting the world media network or the world network? Is sun flares, solar flares. They say if a solar flare is big enough, and they monitor them all the time, they say if a absolute solar flare, one came out 100 years ago. If it hit the Earth, it would completely derail the whole of our communications because it would hit the satellites for a start and then it would go from there. Solar flares. Did you know that?
What was
No, I
the thing
didn't
you
know
told
that,
me
but I
about the
know
other day
about
about
the flares
tinfoil
coming
hat?
off the sun. Beg your pardon?
What is a tinfoil hat wearer again?
Tinfoil hat.
Yeah, tinfoil hat is those with the conspiracy theorists.
That's what we've turned into.
Yeah. What about Gary? You said about Gary Ablett.
I was just saying how he said it was a conspiracy theory, the coronavirus. And Joe, I just
And he said
went
the
on a
world
little
is
bit-
nigh.
Beg your pardon?
The world is nigh.
Well,
And flat.
all of those things, you got to listen to him. He covered a lot of different aspects, but then I just took it a little bit further, and that's why I started to think of the mobile network and our computer system.
Do you think they landed on the moon, Donald? That's a conspiracy theory. There's
I know.
people say they never landed on the moon.
They just set up a thing in the back factory. No, the moon in the back factory.
And the bloke went to Buzz Aldrin's house. This is true. You can Google this. He went to Buzz Aldrin's house and knocked on his door. He was a conspiracy theorist. And he said, Mr. Aldrin, he said, we don't believe you went to the moon. And Buzz hauled off and punched him, broke his nose, punched him to the ground. It's a good, that ends an argument, doesn't it?
You didn't happen to watch the national, well, it does. You didn't watch the national press conference last week or luncheon.
No, what happened, Don?
Andrew Livius was on. You don't know him.
No,
I've
go
never
ahead.
heard of him before. Chairman of Dow Chemicals.
Yes, what?
He's an Australian, very good talker, had some ideas and a very good salesman, and had a lot of different. He is an advisor to Trump, your mate.
Yes.
And also Obama in business.
Yes.
Chairman of Dow
Chemicals.
Chemicals.
Well, what did he
Born
say?
in Darwin, and went to Darwin High School, graduated in chemical engineering, I think at Brisbane.
What did he say?
His whole theory on government, the world, trade, and everything was just enlightening.
And what did he say about it?
Well, he covered a lot of things.
Like what?
Well, go onto the YouTube.
No, you're doing it. This is a subject
Well,
you've
all
written
I'm
down
saying
on
is
your
go
little
and listen.
notepad.
You didn't listen.
I did.
but go.
You said, have you ever heard of this
Well,
bozo?
one little thing he said about politicians is, and he was giving a young man advice, the way
Yes.
I interpret
What
him,
was
saying
it?
he said, go out and get a degree in technology, then go off and set up your own business, understand how business works, and then nominate yourself and stand for Parliament as a politician. He believes our politicians are just not qualified in the business sphere to do what
This
they're
is
doing.
the man
and
from
he's
Dow
also
Chemicals.
on the Dow Chemicals. He's also helping the Northern Territory recover after coronavirus. He's advising them. That's his home state.
How
That's
is he
what he's
advising them to recover?
doing. I don't know, but I just
But you
saw
went to- you
on
listened to
his-
the press
on his-
conference, didn't you?
I saw on his resume that this is also something else that he is.
So you watched the press conference, did you?
Yep.
And you don't know how
Well,
he's...
that's where this main thing that came out about the politicians, how they should get a technical education or qualification, go off, start their own business, then go into politics.
I said,
I
how
thought that
did
was
he
just-
help Trump and Obama?
I don't know, Johnny.
Well, you watched the press
he just
conference,
mentioned
didn't you?
he also helped the people in Saudi Arabia. So he
by
advises
doing what?
different people in business. Because I think Dow are trying to get into chemicals.
Dow are trying to get into
Not
chemicals.
chemicals, I mean petroleum, or they're doing something with gas or...
He was giving the advice to the people in the United Arab Emirates. Was it how to run business? I tell you, as soon as the oil stops coming out of the ground, they'll just collapse. They'll just completely disintegrate.
I think that...
They've done nothing to improve the... they've invented nothing, those people. All they've done is just pulled oil out of the water, oil out of the ground.
Time for sport.
Well, is there any other final things you want to speak about? Did you have any other topics at all? Flesh-eating disease? Well, I'll give you another.
What about an if? We haven't had an if for a while.
Righto, here the ifs. Oh, dear, very low. Right, here we go. If you could have the world's... If you could... What?
Don't worry, ignore him.
Okay. If you could have the world's largest collection of one thing, what would it be? The world's largest collection of one thing. What would you like to collect most? The largest collection of what?
You can't say saddles.
You can say saddles. You can say anything you like.
My thing is collecting horse bits.
Big pun. Horse bits. So let me just get this straight, Donald. Here's a man, a partially educated man sitting opposite me. That's you. Captained Hawthorn to several grand finals and a star. You want, if you could be the largest collector of anything in the world, it'd be fucking horse bits, would it? Mm-hmm. Holy Christ. What? Sorry for swearing. Blasphemy. Horse bits, what's that?
They're things that go in the horse's mouth. I've got a collection now, and I'd like to, and there are a lot more bits coming out.
So not stamps or cars or signatures or horse bits.
Or art.
Or art.
Money.
Horse bits.
And what would you do with them?
Well,
Mount them?
Well, I was thinking that, hang them on my wall.
Hang-
all the different styles and variations.
And have an opening in your house. Come round.
No,
I want to have an
so
opening.
what would you, instead of putting shit on me,
Yep.
what would you?
Largest collection of
Yeah.
anything in the world, money.
You've thought about this.
No.
This is smart. You think.
No, the largest-
You're supposed to come here unprepared.
I'll tell you what I would collect. I'd like to have the world's largest collection, the most valuable collection of stamps. A philatelist.
Why? Why would you have? Exactly. I used to collect stamps. Why?
Why'd you collect stamps?
I collected first day issues.
Why?
I wish I knew where all those first day issues were from when I was a little
And why
kid.
did you
I've
collect
lost
them?
I don't know. There was nothing else much to do back in
No,
those days.
because they'd
was
be
there?
extraordinarily valuable, and to have the world's largest collection, the threepenny dark or the penny dark,
What?
the threepenny or penny dark, that's the most valuable stamp in the world, I think. Or
Remember
signatures.
the stamp that came out in the 50s? It was a coloured stamp of Collins Street. Do you ever remember? Did you collect stamps back in the 50s?
I didn't collect stamps at all, Donald. I'm just
I
saying
did.
I would like to have the world's largest
I knew
collection
what I-
of stamps as opposed to horse bits. That's probably the most extraordinary answer I've ever heard. Horse bits. What are horse bits? Little things that go in their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
We done?
Yeah, one more.
No, we're doing ifs.
Well, just if you learned that you were to die in exactly an hour, if you learnt that you were about to die in exactly an hour, what would you do?
I don't think I'd do anything.
Oh, no, that's not an answer.
I'd probably ring up my 2 children.
So I'm about to die in an hour. You've got 50 minutes to get round here.
Have you got that 100 you owe me?
Yeah.
For 100, he owes me more than 100.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got to send him an account.
So that's what you do, is it? Just to ring up your kids. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Murder someone I didn't like.
And who would that be?
I don't know. I'd have to think
no,
about it.
no, don't tell us. Don't
They're all
tell.
rehearsed.
I'd have
No,
to. They're all rehearsed. All right. Well, we've done this before. No, we've done this before.
Come on, last one when we're going.
God, this wouldn't happen if Mickey was here. We'd be bouncing and flying. Do you think he really will come back? John,
Yes,
do you think he really will come back?
I think he's itching to come back,
Right.
but he's waiting for the warding off period to pass.
We need him.
And where we need him, because he could question you about that bloke that you watched on Q&A. What you said, you were watching him at a press conference, and you said, "Did you watch this bloke at the press conference?" I said, "No." Well, he was fantastic.
No, I just said interesting.
Yeah, he's interesting. I said, "What was he interesting? What did he
And I
speak
went
about?"
on and
He said, "Well,
explained that
things."
he's a salesman as
That's
well
right.
as articulate.
Yeah.
And I said, very interesting.
You're
so
great
to
at
to get anywhere in life, you've got to be a salesman and articulate.
Do you know what you're great at, Donald? You're great at opening up a topic in general terms, and then when you ask for specific reasons
adding
as
nothing.
to why you opened up the topic, you're found
just
wanting
gave it
because
to
you're
you
just
how
a peripheral and general man who has no specific thing to say but just says it. You drift ahead hoping something will come into your brain while you're speaking, and very seldom does it ever.
You're going to finish with an if?
I'd whack him, Don.
What?
You're going to finish with an if?
Yeah, I got an if. Come on.
Come on, hurry up.
Here's an if. All right.
Rod, get that button ready, please.
Yes, mate.
This is agony. It's torture.
Oh, tell me about it.
Come on. Oh, don't.
Well, think of
swear.
something. Think of something.
No, I'm waiting. Just pick anything. You got a whole book. Just open one page and hit it with your finger. Don't.
If you had to pick the most difficult question you could be asked, what would it be?
No, come on, answer it.
No, hit the
Answer
button.
it.
I didn't even listen to his question. I was waiting for you to hit the
It's not
button.
a joke, Don. It's a question.
You weren't even listening.
I wasn't.
What is the most difficult question someone could ask you? Well, have you ever had sex with an animal, or have you ever? What is the most difficult question? Something that is true that you didn't know that they knew was true, and you'd have to answer
Well,
it.
I'm not going to answer that if I know some embarrassing thing that's happened in my life. What about you? Come on.
No, you've got to ask the
No.
question. You've got to ask the question.
What was the